Thurston County Board of County Commissioners Board Work Session for Wednesday, June 23rd, 2021. It is 9:36 a.m. My name is Ty Menser, Chair of the Board. To my left is Vice Chair Commissioner Gary Edwards, and to my right is Commissioner Carolina Mejia. County Manager Mira Chavez is with us, and a whole host of folks on our Zoom screen that we'll get to as we go through this briefing. Central service rates is the topic. We have an hour scheduled. The public can participate through our Thurston County YouTube channel where this meeting is being live streamed. And I think the board's got the slides in front of us. I'm going to turn it to the county manager to introduce where we're headed.
Thank you, commissioners. Robin Campbell, the assistant county manager, usually is the key player on this presentation, but she has great staff to follow suit on that one. She has a family emergency to deal with. So what are you here today? I think they hold more in the central services rates and the information technology rates. It's informational to you at this point in preparation to the 2022-2023 biennial budgets. Internal rates are part of the overall county budget, and that's how we fund operations internally to the county. And facilities, information technology, and everything else associated to support county government as we provide services to our citizens. So I think it's going to be a back-to-back presentations, I believe, in terms of the central services rates as well as the information services. So at some point we'll make the shift. I don't think we need to change Zoom meetings. We can just continue on at your discretion, Commissioner. So with that in mind, who is going to take the lead on central services? Is that Jetty? Or
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Ramiro. We're going to have Denise start us off, and then it'll go to Jenny.
Yep, Denise, you're it.
So I was just going to provide a little bit more context just to help lay the groundwork here. So as Romero mentioned, support services are those services that are shared across offices and departments who are, in essence, internal customers. So examples are like the mail services, computer services and access, utilities, risk management, personnel benefits. Tomorrow you're going to hear about the cost plan. Those are indirect services allocated out by financial services, and it includes items such as the financial services provided by the auditor's office, human resources, state auditor's office, and the civil division of the prosecutor's office. State law is the underpinning for us in allocating costs to restricted funds, and Robin will tell you more about that next week. But at the base or the foundation is the concept that the beneficiary of the service pays, and that those costs need to be allocated in a fair and equitable manner to the funds that receive the benefit. Funds can only be charged for the actual cost of the service. They can't make a profit on it. And if estimates are used to develop rates, then they have to be reconciled at the end of the year. And if too much was collected, either a rebate is provided or rates have to be reduced in future years. As you recently discussed in Amendment 1, if the county decides that a particular fund or fund cannot afford to pay their fair share, it needs to be paid from the general fund. Here in the county, we've traditionally used two different methods for allocating costs. One is where we bill after the service has been provided for, and the other is based on estimated future costs. So examples are for indirect services. They bill out actual costs on a 2-year lag. So they'll be allocating out actual costs from 2020 into 2022. Alternatively, mail services will estimate what the cost will be next year, and they'll bill that out. And you're hearing about rates and cost allocation now because we need direction really early in the budget process on rates. And with that, I'll turn it over to Central Services.
Right. Well, good morning. I hope everybody can hear me okay. My name is Jenny Branham, and I'm the fiscal manager here in Central Services. I also support the information technology department with accounting duties, and also Jetty and her staff support for administrative support. I don't know if you would like for me to share my screen to show the slides, or if you have
Please
the
go ahead.
slides.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay, good. Looks good?
Looks good.
All right. As both Romero and Denise proposed, that we will be talking central services and information technology rates, proposed rates for 2022. Oh, where's my clicker? Sorry. I'm new with this Zoom stuff. It's not moving. Sorry, you guys.
I've gotten through the entire
There we go.
pandemic so far without sharing a screen, so I'm very proud of it.
Really? Wow, you're lucky.
All right. So, as Denise had mentioned, that will be requesting approval to release these rates to our customers, so they will be able to prepare their respective budgets for the upcoming year. We like to put out right out front the overall impact of these proposed 2022 rates for central services. Overall will be at about 6.8% increase. And in our information technology department, it will be approximately 20.2% increase. And we will also be preparing our 2023 rates based on inflationary factors. So just a little bit of background. Our customers are our internal offices and departments, ranging from sheriff to public works to public health. We provide services including building maintenance, our utilities, fleet operations, phones, computers, and all our reserve accounts for both departments. We estimate these costs, what it's going to cost us next year, and we recover those through the rates that we are going to charge our customers. Audit and accounting standards require us to allocate them in a fair and equitable manner to everyone. And we do that by estimating our expenditures and our anticipated increases. And we also, at the end of the year, we do our reconciliation that Denise referred to. So we don't want to make a profit. We want to stay status quo. So we refund anything that we overcollected or underspent, and we'll provide those rate allocations by customers based on the service. So for example, I think Denise might have talked about it, building square footage, number of mail stops for our mailroom services. For our record center, we allocate out by number of boxes. As we move forward to the next couple slides, you'll notice that at the bottom of each of the slide, I broke out kind of percentage based on whether it's general fund impact or if it's a non-general fund impact overall or to our non-county agencies. So to get us started, the next several slides will be by fund, and our central services operating fund is going up
Jenny?
approximately.
Jenny?
Yes.
Commissioner Edwards had a question real quick just about what you said about the breakdown of the numbers.
Yeah, whereabouts are, you're talking about right now on page 5, is that what you're at?
Yes,
Okay. Okay, got it.
Each slide is a particular fund, is that what you said? We didn't quite catch that.
yes, as we move forward, starting with this slide 5, it's gonna be by fund.
Okay. Okay, that's,
And at the bottom of each one, I've kind of highlighted the impacts to whether it be general fund, non-general fund, or non-county agency.
got it.
Okay.
Got it. Thank you.
This, you bet.
Thank you.
So Jetty is our administrative services manager, and she's going to talk through her changes to her proposed budget rates.
Yes, good morning, Jetty Silva-Chanowski. I oversee the records and the mailroom postage budgets. So as you can see here, the records rate will see an increase of $27,079 over last year, and the mail postage will have a decrease of $14,705. The third bullet is county-wide services. This is a new cost center for central services. And what that will include is a team of a management analyst who will provide open gov services, and 2 procurement and contract specialists who will provide guidance and coordination on procurement and contract work countywide. And that amount of the $399,411 includes mostly the personnel costs of the 3 individuals, a small supply budget, and other anticipated costs.
So those are all new FTEs?
They're not necessarily new FTEs, because we have a contract specialist, and Whitney Pearsall is the Open Gov staff. It's just that now it'll be countywide versus just central services. So we're going to open up the services to other offices and departments.
And there's going to be reductions in other areas to compensate for the 400,000?
Actually, that'll be part of the rates that we charge for the services that we receive.
The current positions, hopefully I can help explain a little bit. The current positions were in our admin budget, and they have been removed from our admin budget. So our admin costs actually are going down a little bit because we're shifting those personnel costs to the new cost center directly instead of having them in our admin costs. I hope that helps.
Well, it does help, but I'm hoping you'll go through, each time you go through and where you say, this is a new service basically, and $400,000 expenditure offset by what, a reduction in admin services? Is that what I'm hearing? It just doesn't.
Exactly.
Okay. I mean, I just think it'll help us understand what you're doing as far as the changes. Then we won't bug you too much if you say, well, it's being saved from over here, some other place.
So
Let's ask questions. Go ahead.
yeah, I'm sorry. I'm still kind of confused about it. So with the reduction of the admin fees, is that funds going into the countywide services now?
I'm trying to articulate. So originally, Jetty had the contract person in the admin budget. And so that contract person will move out of admin into this new cost center. And our admin costs are allocated across all the programs you see listed here: records, mailroom, maintenance. So each of those divisions, some of their costs are going to actually go down a little bit because they don't have as big as the admin costs, because those admin costs are now in countywide services cost center. So it kind of shifts from admin to the actual cost center. So it's a better tracking mechanism on what those services are actually costing.
And then, so does this show up here under administration and operations, I guess is where you're talking about, that there's a reduction of 400,000 out of?
You would not see it on this slide, but you would see it in our admin spread, what we call our admin spread, because we have my salary, we have Jetty's salary, we have our senior office assistant salaries. Those are spread across all these programs because we support them every day, whether it be accounting duties or reception area or Jetty's HR liaison duties. Those are spread across all these programs.
Okay, and is it gonna show that somewhere?
Not on the slides. I can, if we would like to get into that, that would, I mean, we can make a note and put something together for you to show that. But it would have to be at a later date to get
Okay.
through.
Hang on, County Manager has a question.
Okay, Jenny, I think there's two elements on this new additional expense. One is the cost allocation that you are describing. Because right now, we don't have a means and methods to cost allocate, let's say, a position that we have. We currently provide services to the rest of the county, but really it's not covered under the cost allocation. Right? So
Yeah.
what we're doing is with that particular position is we're just moving into to accurately allocate the expenditure, so because everybody in the county benefits from that position. That's number one, I believe, right?
That's correct.
But also, I believe what on this, there's new positions that you are trying to create next year. Is that accurate? Because what you said is a management analyst, because I believe that's the existing position, but the contract specialist, are those new positions?
The contract specialist was originally adopted and approved to support the new IT department.
Okay, so there is no new positions on this cost allocation?
No.
Okay, so it's purely just cost allocation of existing positions just to capture the services that we provide across the county and properly allocate the cost within.
That's correct.
I don't know if that
So I have a question going back a slide before we get too far. Number 4. So I think I understand rate development, but when we get to rate allocation, that last bullet, is that, this is a very fundamental question of understanding of this whole system. Do we allocate based on some kind of even spread, or is it based on a particular department's historical use of that service, or is it tallied up like a fee-for-service type of thing, and you pay for what you pay a certain rate for the services you utilize? And does that vary by the kind of rate?
It definitely varies between rates and what the service is. So for example, our building reserves and our maintenance costs are all allocated across everybody by building square footage.
Okay.
So the services they're receiving to maintain that space will vary across all the offices and departments. It's just like.
Yeah. Let's take something like this contract for procurement specialist. I mean, I can imagine certain departments using the heck out of that and other departments using it once in a blue moon. So I understand that it's great for the county to have it available to everyone, but how do the different departments actually pay, given they might use it in a completely different quantities?
We have actually allocated it out by budget. So based on their total budget. Okay. So the bigger your budget, the bigger their piece of that cost, and then at the end of the year, when we do the reconciliation, we can make adjustments accordingly to make it fair and equitable moving forward to the next year's rates.
Is that the same for records and mail room and postage? It's based on the percentage of the county budget that they,
No, records is based on the number of boxes that they have over in storage. So that would drive the level of service. If they have a lot of boxes, they're the ones pulling, they're using that staff to pull and deliver records. Our mailroom services, they're allocated by the number of mail stops they have. How many times do we stop and pick up their mail throughout the day?
okay, well I find that very interesting, just because those are very different. Like a couple of those examples that you said are very targeted to the actual use, like the number of boxes
Exactly.
being stored. Something like just allocating by the percentage of the county budget, that might be a good shorthand, but it's a couple levels removed in terms of guesstimation and ballparking the use. It may not as closely reflect accurate use. Not to say that's not a bad approach, but I'm just pointing that, I'm just trying to think out loud. Sounds like there's a continuum of different approaches we use depending on the rate involved.
Correct.
Maybe
And-
associated with your question, Commissioner Menser, is the reconciliation that Jenny just stated, which is based on a 2-year lag. Maybe take a little time on describing what that reconciliation method does, because I think we go back to see actuals to do the reconciliation, right?
Yes, what we do is we take 2020's actual revenues and actual expenditures and get the net difference. So if we've over collected in records,
We send it back.
our records customers are gonna get a rebate back to their, a reduction in their rates for the next year because we don't wanna show that profit.
So there's a couple of steps in there. Is one is
Yeah,
setting the baseline as Jenny described in terms of, okay, the number of boxes and everything else. But there's always, we have to go back to reconcile this in a 2-year lag, just to make sure that we didn't overcharge or undercharge.
Undercharge in
Undercharge,
aggregate or by
exactly.
group?
Actually, it's by group, by function.
So if a lake management district, for example, paid an indirect rate and then a reconciliation, it turns out they didn't use any of those services, they get money back?
Put to the fund.
Commissioner, could I give one example of this? Because we have this coming up as well. So an example would be, we set our rates for all of our staff, and then say we have a significant amount of vacancies for that year. We still collect those funds for that year, but then at the end of the year, we would have not paid those salaries because we had a significant amount of vacancies. So then we would have to rebate that back.
But that's a 2-year lag, isn't it?
That's how it works, in a 2-year lag.
Yeah.
So, and that's what Jenny was saying is the 2020 actuals that we will be using for reconciliation.
But just to finish this, because I want to make sure I get it. When you say rebate it back, and then Ramiro said to the fund, so let's say on public health, okay? I pay a rate.
Is it
For
$100? Yeah.
I paid $100 and IT using Dennis's hypothetical, he didn't have as many staff and that $100 rate was set on 10 staff and he only used 5. So I, as the director of public health, I'm not gonna get money back in my budget. It's gonna go back into the fund that calculates what the rates are for the next cycle. Is that how it works?
So depend where the $100 were originated. Let's say it's originated in public health on the home fund, just for talking purposes. The $50 rebate has to go to the home fund
Okay, it does go back.
because it couldn't go to the general fund.
But when I said lake, I use a lake management district example. You said back to the fund.
Yeah, to the,
Their fund, though.
their fund.
Oh, okay, their fund. So that's directly,
Yeah, and I just wanted to confirm that with staff, because we couldn't just collect from other funds and then if it's any rebates, quote unquote, cannot go to the general fund because that will be considered a revenue, which is not allowed. It has to be fair and equitable.
well, what if because of, not overuse, but because of heavier use from one group and lighter use from another group, overall, Dennis, it evened out. They didn't make a profit, but vis-a-vis a particular group like public health versus lake management district, there might have been a disparity in who paid and who got what?
In that case, say public health overused the services, then they were undercharged, so that charge will be adjusted. They say public works underused the services, there will be a rebate. I mean, it's by fund, what we go through the reconciliation. Please confirm that, Jenny.
The rebate reconciliation is by program, by the service. So if we over collected or underspent in records, the rebate, let's say it's 25,000, we collected too much, and we have to rebate this 25,000 back out to the customers. It's rebated back out in the manner in which it was collected. So we wouldn't go fund by fund by fund, like you're getting 1,000, you're getting 1,000. It would be allocated back out to the customers the way it was collected to make it fair and equitable.
The way it was collected, but not fund by fund.
Right. So if the Lake Management District paid 1% of the cost, they're going to get 1% of the rebate.
To their fund.
For their fund, yeah, it's going to affect their fund. Exactly.
You're stating the customer, but the customer is the person, but the revenue generated by the customer is by fund.
I don't know if my questions make sense.
No, I don't know enough to ask a proper question. I mean, I really don't.
It's
And
very
anyway,
detailed.
I do have one other thing I'd throw in there, just, I don't know if it muddies the water or clears it up. Okay, so the administration fund is gonna be an 8.7% increase, it looks like. But we're saying that we're taking $400,000 out of there, so why, if we didn't take that $400,000 out to put in countywide services new under, it's 399,411. Okay,
Yeah.
if we didn't take that out, the increase might have been 9.5% or
well, I
10%
just
or something.
the increase, the 8.7% increase is over across the whole fund. As we move through the slides and you get down to facilities, and Jason will be getting there, but the majority of that increase is the $450,000 increase that we had to incur for Chandler Court, the rent. So, I mean, if you take away the increase for Chandler Court, I believe I calculated it to be less than 1% increase overall across the whole fund.
That makes sense, but now that brings up another question. If we're going to increase the rates due to Chandler Court, for an example, that is being funded out of CARES money. And I wanna make sure that the general fund doesn't have to pick up any of that cost. So do we have that figured out as well? So everything in here, and whether it's computers or printers or whatever that we had to buy new, and then that affects the rate, I'm hoping that cost gets assigned to the CARES money activity.
Currently in 2021, it is being paid and funded by CARES Act money. With not knowing how far that extension is going to come out, that funding is going to last, we included it in the rates. And if come January 2022, we still have that funding available from the CARE Act funding, it will continue that. And so it would not come out of the general fund, it would come out of the CARE fund, CARE money.
Yeah, it will be. And in fact, we're going to be creating a new fund for the ARP funding, just to track that. So it will be in the split on the customer allocation at the bottom of this page where you have the general fund for $155,000. The majority is for the Chandler Court. When the board approves this new fund, it will be, that's where the money will come from. Because the ARP funding will take us all the way to December 2024. So there is, Commissioner Edwards is on point. To make sure that we track the expenditures related to the Chandler Court, should be covered by the ARP fund, the recovery fund.
So that's gonna be the new separate line item that we're gonna start keeping track of.
Right, and
Better
that's for your
cares.
consideration, next Tuesday, to create that fund.
Because it's part of the budget amendment.
Right.
Okay,
Commissioner Mejia?
clear as mud, huh?
See, she's where I was, because I don't think the first year, I didn't even know what question to ask, because it was
Yeah.
overwhelming, and now I know just a little bit to be dangerous.
Well, I've been here longer and I still don't know which question to ask.
But how much your own point, this will be, yeah.
Now I realize how confused it is.
Yeah, I'm just trying,
It is.
yeah, trying to set it
Drink
in.
from that fire hose.
So if I mean, this is mechanical. This process is extremely mechanical as to how we allocate costs to the many different funds. The Genesee customers, the customers within those funds, right? And that's how it's mechanical as to how we allocate the funds. And by law, would that need to reconcile, and that reconciliation is a 2-year lag. And you heard that before, Commissioner mentioned, is that 2-year lag, because only then we'll know what the actual expenditures will be to have a logical reconciliation of the charges. Because at the beginning, we cannot overcharge, because that will be against the law to generate revenue.
I do think this is gonna be less muddy and clearer if we have one separate fund on CARES money, which is one of the.
Yeah.
That, last year or something.
Well, last year last year we were moving 100 miles an hour.
Oh, I know, I'm not, it's nothing critical, I'm just saying it'll be easier to keep track, and this will make more sense, I think. And I'll just go back to the whole inflation business, how much of that is CARES, and how did COVID-19 issues affect all of these rates? And if we have a new line item, we can keep track of that, I think.
So I have a question, kind of following where Commissioner Menser was coming from. Thank you, by the way, for kind of breaking it down for me, because I understood his questions a lot. How about if a department, we talked about, which fund it would go to if the department underuses it. But if a department overuses it, more than what they were charged with that rate, I mean, do they get kind of like a bill at the end of the year? How does that work?
The new rates will be going up.
Okay.
Based on a 2-year lag.
Yeah, based on the actual-
So-
Yeah.
the rates go up.
But the department doesn't get charged more
Well,
until like
they-
2 years later.
They will be on the additional charges that will last for another 2 years
Okay.
until we can do a reconciliation.
So a higher rate may be in part back reconciling a shortfall from 2 years ago. Okay.
Figuring out a 2-year budget based on a 2-year
So,
lag.
hey, Jenny, stop me if I'm making more confusion, or I'm trying to help here.
Ramiro's speaking knows commissioners speak a little better than others. Okay, go ahead. Let's see where we're at.
All right, so I think if Jason wouldn't mind talking about his programs that he's managing, would be
Yes.
great.
Good morning. I'm Jason Ash, Facility Services Manager. First off, I do want to let you guys know that our 22 rates do not include any acquisitions of any new locations or moves to new buildings. That is not built into this figure.
That'd be a 2-year lag coming through on that.
Maintenance and operations, we have a reduction of 574,000. This is due mainly in part to the reconciliation that Jenny and Denise spoke about earlier. Custodial, we have an increase of $211,000. This is due to an increase in the scope of work and inflation for the new contract that will be starting at January 1st of 22. Our utilities, we have an increase of just over 93,000. This is based on the prior year actuals of 2020, and with them being at lower capacity, we had a great reduction in the utilities, so we based it on full capacity moving forward. And then last is the lease, which Jenny spoke about, which includes the Chandler Court. Do you guys have any questions on these?
What other lease, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, what other leases does that include?
That includes the record center lease. I believe it includes the drug court lease also. And the facilities lease currently.
So kind of going back to Commissioner Edwards' question, like, why is that not separated? Because one of them is getting paid with COVID funds while the other ones are paid with general fund.
So on the customer allocation, on the bottom of the page, because the fund for the ARP funds have not been,
Okay.
has not been created, portions of the 455,000 general fund will be coming from the ARP funding.
And that would include the enhanced cleaning custodial costs.
So we
For going around and wiping the door now.
we still need to do a little homework after the board approves the new fund to start charging some of those
Okay.
activities.
And utilities, is that because what, water rates went up or power rates went up? Or why did that change?
That's based on us being at full capacity. We had less power usage and natural gas usage in 22, and also on scheduled increases from PSE.
And those are all, well, no, maintenance and operation is down, right? The 574,000. And
Yes.
custodial is up because of some of that, or utilities. And on leases, wouldn't the auditor's lease over there be included in that as well?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I guess we can keep going.
All right, yeah, let's keep going, see where we can see if we can make some.
So our next slide is going into our building reserve account. So Jason, if you want to talk that.
Yes, so Fund 5220 is our building reserves. We are proposing a 1% increase for 2022. These rates are based on currently known repairs that we have. This also does not factor in any new acquisitions of property purchases or the movement to any new sites. I also will add that this does not include any increases for buildings 1 through 6. It has been determined that those the repairs needed for the courthouse campus cannot be completed by raising building reserves to a reasonable amount. So as far as customer allocation, just over 1% will come out of the general fund. Non-general fund will be 0.4% for a total of 1952, and then non-county will be 0.9%.
How does that cover just general maintenance for these buildings? Because that's
It
gonna
does-
continue for a while, no matter what we do.
Yes, yeah, that's out of our maintenance and operations fund. This is for our major repairs. So it's 2 separate funds.
Okay.
So I have a question. Previously it was within the conversation of taking out the $50 million bond to repair these buildings. Would a rate then be put on to kind of do the upkeep of these buildings? How would that work?
Yeah, I think Jason touched base on that. This is not a schedule increases for 1 through 6. Because the repairs needed on those buildings are way too much. We cannot afford the repairs of those buildings by just raising the rates. It will disseminate any fund.
But if they are fixed,
So
put on?
speaking of the potential $50 bond that we're gonna be utilizing to do the upgrades, then we will upgrade, and there will be another analysis as to how much it will cost to maintain after those improvements I put in place.
Okay. Thank you.
Just a question in general, I don't, not necessarily Jason, maybe the county manager. As we move forward with this and trying to be open government, do you think the public really understands what we're doing here? Do they, or is that just, that's where they depend on us to try and understand it, huh? Because it's pretty complicated.
It is extremely complicated, and it's extremely challenging to, explain what the indirect cost rates are, the internal services, to the citizen. I think conceptually, they probably understand it. They will need to generate some type of revenue to provide internal support to the operations of the county business.
And do all counties go through this process the same as we do? I mean, there's the way we're handling it, we're following state law or something.
All of the above.
All of the above. And everybody does it the same way. There's not a simpler concept that we could do. Okay, everything's based on an inflationary index, and we're gonna give everybody 2.2% or whatever. That's too simple,
I
right?
wish it could be that easy.
Yes, I do too. Okay, good enough. I just wondered. Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, keep going, Jenny.
No,
Jason?
here we go.
All right.
Next slide.
Bruce Roba, Fleet Services Manager. ER&R collects two rates, one for maintenance and operations of vehicles and equipment, and one for replacement.
Is that Bruce?
There.
Bruce, can you come closer?
Do you have good audio now?
There you go, a little better.
Yeah.
A little better. Thank you.
I'll run through it from the top. Bruce Roba, Fleet Services Manager. ER&R collects two rates, one for the maintenance and operation of vehicles and one for replacement. Top half of the slide reflects maintenance and operations. This is collected on a 2-year lag. So the 2022 rate that you see reflects 2020 actual operating costs of equipment. There's a 4.1% increase from 21 to 22, with the big change being in the allocation. The allocation is up by, you have good audio?
Yeah, perfect. Brian pumped you up a little bit, so it sounds better.
A 16% increase in the general fund and a 2.6 decrease in non-general fund. That really reflects the continued operations of the sheriff's office throughout the COVID.
Wait, 16% did I hear? I see 1.6 here, so.
Here.
That 16.6% increase in the allocation to the general fund.
Page 7.
No wonder I didn't see it, 16.6, I'm looking at 1.6. Okay, got it. Go ahead, Bruce, I'm sorry.
All right, so in the replacement, it reflects an 8.9%. And this is primarily due to, if you recall, in 2020, there was a 23% reduction to ER&R's previously approved rates due to uncertainty from COVID on budget impacts. And as a result, future replacement rates are going to be higher to catch up that reduced collections last year. The replacement reserve is a look ahead. We're forecasting replacement year and replacement cost of equipment in the current inventory. We review the equipment list annually with our customers to ensure that we're maintaining the equipment that they need for future use and reducing when appropriate. Are there any questions?
Yes, you mentioned that some of it based on that 2-year lag. Anyway, so what, tires cost more, gas costs more,
This is replacement though.
cars cost more?
This is replacement of vehicles.
Yep. So
Just replacement vehicles.
The second piece of it is.
Okay. Go ahead.
5420 reflects future cost increases of vehicles. So we're looking ahead to replacement years for individual pieces of equipment, as well as forecasting their cost. Now the cost increase is not so much due to inflation, projected increases in inflation, as much as it reflects a reduction in the 2020 rate. There was a reduction in the 2020 rate due to budget uncertainty from COVID. And so the 2022 rate reflects a catch-up.
County manager has something.
No, that is a good point, Bruce. And Commissioner Mesa and Commissioner Edwards can remember this conversation when all of you were considering not reducing the ER&I rates, because at some point, the discussion was at some point, we have to make this back, because the replacement of the vehicle is not going to be reduced in cost because of the pandemic. So here we are. I mean, because the cost of replacing any vehicles is going to cost is what it's going to cost, and we have the obligation to make sure that we increase the rates to have enough money when those vehicles are up for replacement. And what Bruce is stating is exactly the conversation that we had when the board was considering not to reduce the ER&R contributions in 2020.
Although, this is a question for Bruce, I guess, but like, I drove my car way less miles, and I will probably keep my car an extra year because of that, or more. Are we doing the same, is the same phenomenon true of our fleet? I mean, did we adjust our replacement schedule based on lower amount of use because of pandemic?
Yes, so we meet with our customers annually, and we discuss their utilization of vehicles and forecast replacement years. So we did go through that process. In some cases, it does make sense to extend vehicles an extra year or two. In some cases, it doesn't. So the sheriff's office, for example, drove actually more miles, according to fuel data, in 2020 than they did in 2019. So it's very much dependent on customers as well as their individual vehicles.
Okay, thanks.
But in some instances, Bruce, we may have to replace a vehicle before the replacement date, right?
Correct.
Due to unforeseen circumstances. So it works both ways.
Okay. Questions on slide 7? Let's go on to slide 8. Who's up?
You're muted, Jenny.
Jenny, you're muted.
I can't see her mouth moving.
I'm sorry, you guys. So I just wanted to go over final review for central services, just an overview. We talked about our 2 operating funds of central services and our ER&R fleet division, and then the building reserves and the ER&R reserves. So we've covered those 4 funds. And overall, the general fund is an approximate increase of about 882 across all of our rates. And just keep in mind that 400 of that is going to be, hopefully, it sounds like funding's coming forward for the operation of Chandler Court. So that's good to hear. Our non-general fund customers overall will increase about 300,000, and our non-county agencies will see a slight increase of about $300. If you don't have any other questions on central services, I do have Dennis here to start diving into the IT rates for next year. So no questions so far, Dennis?
Good morning, commissioners.
All clear.
Yeah, right. This is where you depend on staff.
Dennis Osorio, IT director. I would say, I know this is complex, and it's not just you, commissioners. This is a very complex process. We start working at this at the beginning of the year. It takes 6 months. We deal with all the customers across, And I know Commissioner Edwards, you were saying if it was a simpler way, I think we do the most fair and equitable way, and we could trace every dollar to every program area. For us, if we just went through FTE or something across the board, it would be simpler, but I don't think that would be the most equitable cost allocation throughout the county. So I'll jump into our funds. Our first fund is 5250. That's our operations fund. We're looking at an overall increase of 9.9%. And this fund is really broke down into our three main areas. And this is IT operations at $530,000 increase, $328 increase, 7.9%. Some of the major reasons for this is we did get a new position approved, a business application analyst in district court. We also reclassed the same position that's in Superior Court. And we moved 0.75 FTE from Public Works Stormwater. And then another large area is this includes our ERP and Asset Works maintenance costs, which will be ongoing as this project ramps up.
Can you explain that a little more, Dennis?
Which one?
The ERP and Asset Works maintenance.
Yep. So the ERP and Asset Works, that $400,000 is what we will pay every year for the new software.
Those are licensing fees and such?
Correct. Those are licensing fees. So you'll see this, the ERP and Asset Works we'll talk again about in one of our other funds, our large application replacement. But we moved it into here because this is more of like a maintenance and operation costs. This is the cost of these new applications every year, just the licensing fee.
And we're kind of at their mercy, is that right? There's nothing here that we can cut back on or negotiate or?
No, yeah, this is, that's just the cost of using their software.
The cost of doing business.
Dennis, can I ask on the similar question I asked to the other funds at the beginning, in terms of how does this particular item get allocated between departments?
So we use a broad range of allocation methods since each application is different. And some allocation methods is based on number of PCs within an area. So desktops or laptops, the ERP licensing, and Brian, I believe, is on. We're doing that based on the amount of Munis transactions, because that's how we used to divide Munis before. So we try to find an allocation that fits that product the best and allocate it accordingly.
So this
So
new,
go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm just curious, I mean, like, the board added a new FTE specifically directed to assist district court. So I'm just wondering how that cost gets chopped up. I mean, it feels like, if I'm in public health, it feels like, why do I have to pay for that?
No, I'm sorry. No, that is correct. So the FTEs, especially the embedded FTEs, so such as the district court one, that will be billed back to district court.
Okay.
Yes.
And then,
I'm sorry.
It's just funded by the general fund. I mean,
right.
that's what, I mean, it's allocated to district court, but district court is funded by the general fund.
So it all comes out of general fund?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, how about where we bought employees new computers and printers to keep them working and being productive at home? And that's because of COVID-19. So will that COVID-19 line item show that expenditure for those items and the maintenance of the same and licensing of the same, or however?
So what we're looking at, and I think we'll get
Does
into
that
some of,
question make sense? Does it?
I think you're asking how much of an increase is completely tied to COVID-19? Is
Yeah.
that accurate?
Basically, yeah.
And we did have this conversation with Robin. We mainly looked at some of the public health, for example, some of the folks that really increased their workload, increase their staff, their FTEs, because that's when you get a lot of licensing and a lot of more PCs and whatnot. We're just looking at what the current cost is right now going forward. Based on what we do is we do a full inventory in the beginning of the year, and we reconcile all the numbers, so we have actual numbers of what each program area folks are going to have there. How that's going to be split out and if it's going to be funded another way, I don't have that answer. or if they're going to continue to even have that many FTEs in the future. I don't have that answer either.
But that's something we're gonna have to look at, isn't it? When we create that new fund and make sure we're paying out of the
Yeah.
right fund.
But also, remember, public health also has other revenues coming from the state to fund the pandemic.
Maybe for their
response.
activity, but I mean, over across the hall, those folks did a lot of home, worked from home.
Yes, but I think it's two things. For any type of investment, buying, I think how many laptops we bought last year, I can't remember. But it's significant. That's the investment that it was paid by CRA funding. That's done and completed.
So that's all done.
Yeah. that
So
was
now there might
2020.
just be licensing issues or something?
Yeah, if
or-
there's any
What about
licensing,
upkeep?
any ongoing cost, I think that's where probably Dennis is seeing. And
It would be licensing, but as we're saying, such as the laptops, those were paid completely. They will go into a replacement cost, but ideally, we're trading people's laptops out for their desktop. That would be a very similar replacement cost on what they're already doing.
Okay, going back to your question, Ramiro, or your comment to me about it's all general fund. I'm gonna say something and tell me if I've got this right. Like that comment is based on us as commissioners in our seat. And I've been trying to put myself in the department heads positions. So if you're public health director, for example, it matters to you in terms of what your budget is and what you have to ask for from the board based, right? I mean, when I'm asking about that FTE gets allocated to district court.
Right.
I mean, it matters to the departments and their budgets.
It matters to the departments, but for you, and that's.
For
what-
us, in the aggregate, it's just
And
money.
that is why you see on this presentation, the impact to the general fund. Because that's how you are going to assess all that, but at the beginning, staff asked, so when the board agrees to that, then all that information needs to be disseminated to the offices of the department, so they can build on their budgets the new rates.
Right, and I'm looking ahead to budget asks and budget increase requests from different departments to understand how they might view these various changes and how it affects what they need. Okay, sorry, go ahead, Dennis.
So,
Yep, sorry.
you just touched on a very kind of like important point on that, where basically we're gonna be paying for this out of general fund. So it's, okay, you pieced something very, very important, I feel like, in the puzzle, where it kind of just all connects now. Okay, yeah.
Dennis, go ahead.
All set? Okay. So our next one is GIS, which is our geodata team. It's $190,945 increase, 17%. This is one of the ones I was talking about. You can see the bulk of that, 120,000 is from a 2020 reconciliation. So other than that, they're relatively smaller increases. Salary and benefits, 21,000, interfund cost of 40,000, and system maintenance, 8,500. And then our last one is our
Could you explain that 2020 reconciliation?
Yeah, so this was, I think, a prime example. In 2020, we had a significant amount of vacancies that we collected on that team. And then now we are fully staffed for that team.
Okay, I guess I don't get a complete understanding of that.
They didn't have the salary expenditure that was the rate was set for previously. They had some vacancies. So now they're looking back and saying, well, we didn't have those same expenditures.
I have a comment on it.
It sounds like Brian.
There you go, Brian.
Okay, so the data was 2019, we had vacancies, which caused a large rebate in 2020. Now, or for 2021, I should say, now going forward for 2022, we're back to normal. That's why it's an increase. So we had kind of a dip because we had so many.
Okay, that makes sense.
All right.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Brian. So then the next one is our telecom. It's $160,650 increase, 14%. That is mainly circuits. We put redundant circuits in numerous areas throughout the county to give our network resiliency. And then cell phones, $88,000 increase in cell phone usage. And you could tie that probably significantly to COVID. I don't know if the offices and departments will keep all these folks using these cell phones. But at this one is, if it did decrease, then we would not collect that one. We would not collect that if that decreased into the future. Okay, going on to our next one, our Fund 5260. This is our IT reserves. This is a decrease of 17%. And the big decrease here is we moved JABS, which is the court audiovisual system, and the website to the large application replacement reserve. So that's why you're seeing it, although it's a decrease on this, it ties into the increase on the following fund. In addition, we did add collection to the Eagle View aerials, which was more than what we were collecting for the aerials before, because now we're getting more robust aerial services.
What does that added collection for Eagle View aerials mean?
The Eagle View aerials was the project brought forth by the assessor's office to give them oblique imagery last year.
Okay.
It was significantly more than what we were collecting on our aerials prior. And although we paid for the first, the initial costs out of CRF funding, it was a 6-year contract, and the ongoing costs are not tied to CRF funding.
Hey, Dennis, I like how you described that particular application, like more robust aerials.
Yes.
Well, wasn't that the intent of that, is to lessen exposure to the assessor's people, wasn't it? By having this better imaging?
That was the initial argument.
We went through the internal auditor and they came up with a proportion that we're allowed to charge, and they charged that.
As you may remember, it was not entirely CRF funding because it didn't qualify. It was a portion
Some
of
of
that.
it did.
The remainder was general fund, and that was the commitment the board made.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah. So here we are. It's just we're trying to catch up with all that.
Wow.
Okay, any more questions on? Then we'll go to our last fund, and this is the significant increase. This is what's driving our budget up overall. This is Fund 5240, our large system replacement reserve. As you can see, since this fund was established, I believe in 2016, the rate was $651,786 was collected a year, spread out throughout the county based on the large applications that were in that fund. As everyone here knows, that is not enough to replace any of those applications in that fund. So we went through this year, and we actually did this last year, but due to COVID, we did not implement this immediately. We went through and updated all these large systems to accurately represent what it's going to cost to replace them, and then what the new collection rate will be. In addition to that, the bond payment for the ERP is also in here, which is
Significant.
roughly $700,000. So we will need to pay that as well out of here.
And that was really the strategy behind, issuing the bonds to purchase both the ERP as well as the replacement of Manda system.
And that's a 6-year replacement schedule, is it?
And I think, what is that? Is that a 10-year or 6-year payment?
So it's gonna be every year we're gonna have that payment.
And I think when this rates are established, most likely in the future will not increase the pay system. Is that right, Dennis?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said, Romero.
So the discussion is on the ERP and the Amanda system. Was mentioned to the board. That was the financial strategy by issuing the bonds, because the bonds pays the initial investment. But also we need to set up the rates as to how we're going to be paying the bonds. So it give us more time to pay for that replacement at this point. But the question is now, to pay for those applications, is it a 6-year or a 10-year? I can't remember.
So for the bond, I believe the bond payment is a 10-year,
Yeah.
correct?
10 years, yeah, thank you.
So it's gonna be $700,000 for 10 years. Okay.
Okay.
So what part of this increase is the bond versus just ramping up making a more robust, large system replacement reserve? Or is it one and the same thing? Am I missing?
No, it's the portion of that, the $700,000, I think it's a little bit more than that, 750 or something, is bond repayment. So then the remainder of that is, as you recall from the previous fund, we did move the website replacement in here, as well as the JAVS replacement. And then we updated a lot of the other large applications. So some of the large applications is the ADAM system for the sheriff was greatly underfunded. So we got a new cost estimate for that, and then put that on a 10-year cycle to start collecting a more accurate cost, as well as Ascend and Sigma, which is the treasurer and assessors programs. Same exact story. These were all, the estimates to replace them were probably about 25% of what actually needed what the cost was coming in at last year. Did that answer your question?
I think so. So we started at 651. We're adding about 700,000 to pay bonds because of the historical deficiency and us having to replace all these systems. And that gets us to like 1.3, and then we're throwing about another 700,000 toward being ready for the future for all the different systems.
Correct.
And that is, that's great if we can afford to do that. I sort of expected that we would be phasing up to something like this rather than cold turkey, just we're gonna set it right in 1 year. I mean, I guess it's the smartest thing to do, but.
We do have the model built, and we could scale it up or down as needed and come up with rates relatively quick around this fund, because we built a model that we can do that with.
Yeah.
But I just want.
I'm hoping that'll be, that $700,000 a year that goes to bond is, I'm hoping about half of that is paid out of general fund and half is non-general fund.
Actually, it's more than that.
Is that right?
Page 11.
No, okay.
Yeah, so if there's no more questions on that one, as we stated, our total increase is 20.2%.
So it's really older than the general fund is the one who's going to be paying for most of it.
Yeah, okay. So the additional 700,000 just to upgrade and the bond is gonna be a little more than
To
other funds. Yeah, okay, good enough. Good.
And just to touch on the large application replacement fund, if we were to do it at a slower pace, obviously we have some of our major applications being replaced and kicking off this year. ERP's kicking off this year. We're getting ready to do the permitting. The ADAM system is already out of date. It's well past its end of life. That's the sheriff system. So if we were to say not collect for that, we could run into the same situation that we were in on why we had to issue bonds to replace some of these other systems. So it's kind of, I understand it's, how you want to eat the elephant, one bite at a time or the whole thing. I do understand that's a decision that does need to be made, but
Don't complicate it today.
Eat the elephant.
Eat the elephant, I know how
I
you're
never heard of that
gonna
one. That's good. All right. All right. Well, I think we're okay there. What's next?
I guess at this point, with the concurrence of the board, I will ask staff to release the rates to the offices and departments so they can start building on their budgets.
Yeah, we don't have to like what we're doing, do we?
Well,
I don't think we ever have.
That's the cost of doing business, commissioners, honestly.
All right. Well, any concerns about that proposal?
Wow. Yeah, but I mean, who's the non-county agencies that are going up 53%? Is that like Central Dispatch or? What's that, Medic One, who's getting that jam?
Yeah, I think that is what it is, right, Dennis, is the non-county agencies, because we provide services to other agencies, right?
Yeah, so the main folks that the reason for this increase is the folks that use our financial system. And they're going to have to start paying a portion of the ERP replacement costs, the ERP and the bond payment. And I believe, and Brian, you might need to help me out on the 3 agencies that use our financial system.
It's Area Agency on Aging, the ORCA, clean air thing. And
Clean Air Agency.
Clean everything.
yeah, and Thurston Regional Planning. They may see these rates and decide not to participate.
Because they're paying their share of a good system, not of super old systems.
Exactly, it's a benefit to them. Whether they choose not to participate, then they choose not to use the system.
Should we hear something?
It's almost like we got them over a barrel. A position nobody likes to be, I
I wouldn't agree with that.
guess. Well, what are they gonna do, you know?
They could put their own system in.
Yeah, which would be a lot more. Yeah, okay.
No.
Wow.
No? Okay, thank you, everybody.
I'm hoping just as we close out here that customer allocation, I hope the CARES thing picks up a fair amount of that, but I don't know how much it's gonna be. But.
So you heard, go ahead and release the rates to the offices and departments so they can start building up on their budgets.
I'm on Orca, so I will hear about this.
Do you get that?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time.
All right, we're back to 2 p.m. for wireless code update, looks like. Until then, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.